We have some really big news, and you know I'm going to get straight to the point. The Houthis out of Yemen, who have now been redesignated as a global terror organization, they have decided to launch 2 ballistic missiles towards a U.S. ship. Now, I'm going to read the report straight from U.S. Central Command. Here's what they had to say about everything. On January 18th at approximately 9 p.m. Sana time, Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists launched 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles at MV CHEM RANGER, a Marshall Island-flagged, U.S.-owned, Greek-operated tanker ship. The crew observed the missiles impact the water near the ship. Again, it was impacted near the ship, no one got hit. There were no reported injuries or damage to the ship. The ship has continued underway. Now, here's why things are getting rather aggressive. Earlier in the day, here's what the U.S. military did to the Houthis. The U.S. launched new strikes against Houthi anti-ship missiles aimed at the Red Sea on Thursday. Essentially, the U.S. military has been trying to contain all attacks out of Yemen, but the way they've been doing it is by going after stationary Houthi targets, predominantly anti-ship missiles. And today, at the time of making this video, the U.S. military was able to target 2 of them. And as you can see, the direct response is, oh, you didn't get all of our missiles, U.S. military. Launches 2 more at a U.S. ship. Now again, looking at the report, this is an American-owned chemical tanker, and if this ship would have been hit, again, and I keep saying this, I probably would have been reporting a completely new story. The headline would have most likely been, "Prepare for war, you have just taken out a U.S. asset." Something else I really want to point out is now that the U.S. military has redesignated the Houthis as a terror group, you'll start to notice the reporting will always be the Houthis, terror organization backed by Iran. It used to be Houthi militant group backed by Iran. Again, now it's Houthi terror group backed by Iran. So it looks like the ball is now back in the U.S. courts. How is the U.S. military going to contain or at least try to stop Houthi targets? Because look, at the end of the day, the Houthis are completing their tasks, absolutely trying to disrupt or trying to delegitimize the U.S. military in the Middle East and go after civilian vessels. There are tons of ships who go through the Red Sea every single day off the coast of Yemen, and the Houthis know this. And by the way, this is all public data. You can go and look up which ships are going where, and when a U.S. ship is driving close by, of course the Houthis are going to try and target a U.S. ship. Now, one thing you will notice is that the Houthis look like they have stopped going after U.S. military assets. A completely different story. An MQ-9 Reaper drone was actually shot down over in Iraq. Again, completely different story, but it goes to show the strategies are different on how Iran has been commanding their militant groups throughout the Middle East. When it comes to the Houthis, stop going after military assets. Maybe we can get a pop shot here or there. Go after civilian assets because no one's going to invade Yemen. They're not going to come after the Houthis. But up in Iraq, go after U.S. military assets because the U.S. military has their hands tied behind their back. They're technically not allowed to be on combat operations, and even if the U.S. military is justified to defend themselves up in Iraq, it's a very, very gray line, and the U.S. military is still getting kicked out of Iraq, but the Pentagon is not acknowledging any of this. So let's look at the symbolism behind the story. You do have the facts of earlier in the day, you had the U.S. military attack 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles, but then later in the day, you now have the Houthis launching 2 missiles. It's almost like tit for tat. And if you're not looking at every single detail of the story and you think it just so happens to be 2 and 2, you're out of your mind. Iran loves to play these mind games, and so do the Houthis. Now, the question is, how many munitions or how much of a stockpile do the Houthis have? Nobody actually knows, but a lot of people could assume they have a pretty strong stockpile. But what's even more important is the willingness the Houthis have to go after these ships. At the end of the day, the burden will always be on the bigger militaries, U.S. military and other assets. And now that the U.S. military or U.S. government has redesignated the Houthis on the bad guy list, this is only going to further further affect any sort of occupation or strategy towards the Houthis, because ultimately the people who are suffering are the people of Yemen due to the humanitarian disaster, the biggest one we've ever seen in our lifetime, is happening right now over Yemen. Nobody knows what to do, but at the end of the day, the Houthis have total control of the entire situation. The U.S. military is not even going after actual Houthi personnel. The U.S. military is strictly going after missiles, and that's about it. Maybe going after some logistics, maybe a truck here or there, but other than that, they are not actually going after commanders. The Houthi know better. They know not to stick their little heads out of the ground. They are hiding. But nonetheless, this is the story. We'll see what happens. And again, I don't like to waste your time. Please turn on the notification, leave a comment or like. I am constantly updating you guys left and right on the story. I feel like I'm always repeating myself, but this is the story. We have a back and forth between the Houthis, U.S. military, pop shot in Iraq. This is what's happening in the Middle East. Further escalation. We will see what happens.